Among them, Ito Takehiko was the most unacceptable. He angrily protested, "Charlie, you don't talk about it here. I just signed a contract with Masayoshi, and used $4.5 billion United States dollars in cash to buy 30% of Kobayashi Pharmaceuticals shares. I alone have 30%, so how can you get 90%? Isn't this a daydream?" Charlie sneered and asked him, "Mr. Ito, right? I ask you, what position is Masayoshi in this company? What right does he have to sign such an agreement with you?" Ito Takehiko said coldly, "He is the acting president of Kobayashi Pharmaceutical. Since he is the acting president, he naturally has the right to sign a financing agreement." Charlie said contemptuously, "Should be nonsense here. Who did his generation of presidents seal it? Did he seal it himself? There is something for him? The entire shares of Kobayashi Pharmaceutical are owned by Masao Kobayashi. Masao Kobayashi is dead. Ichiro and Jiro's father. Jiro's whereabouts are unknown now, so it's all Ichiro's. Why would Masayoshi make a decision for Ichiro and sell you 30% of the shares?" Takehiko Ito angrily picked up the contract signed just now, and angrily scolded, "You can read it clearly. This contract is clearly written in black and white. I, the Ito family, own 30% of Kobayashi Pharmaceutical. And I have already paid for it." "Oh, I'm sorry," Charlie said blankly. "The person who signed this contract with you is not qualified to sign this contract at all, so this contract is invalid. You move yourself. Think about it. If I sign an agreement for you and sell you the entire Japanese island, will the entire Japanese island be yours?" After speaking, Charlie took a copy of the equity transfer from Paul and threw it in front of Ito Takehiko, saying, "Come, see what is written on this. Ichiro has voluntarily incorporated 90% of the shares into JX Pharmaceutical Company, in black and white. And you have to figure out one thing. Ichiro is the legal heir of Kobayashi Pharmaceutical, so this agreement in my hand is truly and legally valid. As for your share, I'm sorry, but it's just a pile of waste paper. Even if you ask your lawyers and judges, I believe they will not admit that your pile of waste paper has any practical meaning. You are a hooligan." Ito Takehiko also collapsed. He has been strong for a lifetime, and has never shown weakness in front of the Yamaguchi group, but he did not expect that he would meet a shameless person like Charlie here today. However, he also knows that his two personal bodyguards are now useless, and he is not Charlie's opponent at all. He can't face him head-on, so he can only temporarily avoid his edge, then find a chance to take revenge, and think of other ways to get it. To the shares of Kobayashi Pharmaceutical. So, he protested indignantly, "Well, since you said Ichiro is the legal heir, then we step back and say, anyway, I have paid $4.5 billion United States dollars. If you say that the contract is invalid, then you just return the $4.5 billion United States dollars to me immediately." Charlie asked in surprise, "Mr. Ito, what did you say? I didn't hear clearly just now." Ito Takehiko said angrily, "I said you must immediately return to me the $4.5 billion United States dollars in Kobayashi Pharmaceuticals account." "Refund?" Charlie snorted and said contemptuously, "I'm sorry, Mr. Ito, you may not know something about me. I have always had an iron rule when walking around the rivers and lakes. Don't know if you hear me, or heard about it." Takehiko Ito gritted his teeth and asked, "What is the iron rule?" Charlie smiled and said, "The iron rule is, never refund, never refund." When Takehiko Ito heard this, his shiny big back was almost exploded. He covered his chest and pointed at Charlie and scolded, "You Wade, you keep saying that you have to follow the law. Is that how you follow? I reached the account of Kobayashi Pharmaceutical for $4.5 billion. You either give me shares, if you don't give me shares, refund me. Do you still want to rely on my money and not give it to me?" Charlie nodded, and said blankly, "Yes. I just want to rely on your money. When the money goes into my pocket, it's up to me. If you ask me to take it out and give it back to you, I have to pay. Come out and pay you back? I don't want face? You." Ito Takehiko felt a sharp pain in his heart. He really has never seen such a brazen person in his life. So, he gritted his teeth and scolded, I still don't believe it. Do you think you can swallow a huge sum of 4.5 billion? Charlie nodded and smiled. Didn't I already swallow this? And you took the initiative to feed me. Ito Takehiko almost vomited blood. Charlie said to Isaac at this time, "Old man, invite Mr. Ito out." Isaac nodded, and immediately brought a few of his men to Takehiko Ito's, and said lightly, "Mr. Ito, you should act yourself, don't force me to move, otherwise you will lie down for a while. Can't get up for 5 months. You dare to threaten me?" Isaac smiled and said, okay. I just threatened you. Master has always had a bad temper. If you don't get out, he might beat you." Takehiko Ito gritted his teeth tightly. His heart was angry, but he didn't dare to resist here. He could only hold back his anger, and said coldly, "Okay. Very good. Charlie, I want to see who has this ability. Can take my 4.5 billion United States dollars. I will never finish this with you." After all, Ito Takehiko left the meeting room with a black face after holding his hands. Charlie looked at his back and smiled faintly. He had heard that Ito Takehiko has always wanted to invest in Kobayashi Pharmaceutical, so he wanted to marry his daughter Nanako to Jiro. Thinking of this, Charlie felt a little unhappy in his heart. Nanako is so beautiful and tender as water, she is definitely a standard Yamato Nadeshiko. Marry her to Jiro? Ito Takehiko was afraid that he was blind. In his opinion, Ito Takehiko and his mother-in-law, Elaine, are not much different. They are people who would rather sacrifice their daughter's happiness and seek benefits for themselves. Therefore, he naturally didn't have a good impression of Ito Takehiko. This 4.5 billion United States dollars thing, it is not bad to give him a bitter taste.